The layoffs were not the end of human labor. They were a repricing of it. Over the past few years, close to 950,000 job cuts were announced across the technology sector. It's a staggering figure, though it's spread across hundreds of companies and several very different causes. Yet several of the giants that led those cuts have since climbed back to almost exactly the headcounts they had before any of it began. So if the headcount came back, what actually changed? They hired people back. But back as what? Most of us heard the same simple explanation. AI arrived and companies needed fewer people. The machines learned to write code, screen resumes, answer tickets. So the humans were let go, round after round, headline after headline. In that version, the layoffs are the proof that the machines won. Then the story flipped. The same companies started hiring again. Postings climbed, recruiters came back, and a string of awkward stories broke. Chatbots that couldn't handle real customers, automated systems shipping broken work. In that version, the humans won. The experiment failed, and the people got called home. The number everyone reaches for to choose between them settles nothing at all. Alphabet, Google's parent, finished 2025 with roughly 191,000 employees, right back where it stood before the cutting began. Microsoft closed 2 straight fiscal years at the same figure, 228,000, even after eliminating some 15,000 roles in between. Watch only the headcount, and almost nothing seems to have happened. But the workforce came back is a sentence with a hole in it. Came back as what? A total headcount stands in for everything that matters while revealing none of it. The same people or different ones? The same jobs or new work under old titles? At the same pay, the same experience, in the same country, as employees or as contractors? The count holds. Microsoft's flatline is the cleanest example of the trick. Hold the total steady at 228,000, and underneath it, the company pulled about 1,000 people each out of research, sales, and administration, and pushed 3,000 into operations. Same top line, different center of gravity. IBM said the quiet part out loud. Its automation absorbed most routine human resources work, and yet its chief executive told a newspaper that total employment rose because the money the machines freed up got redeployed into engineers, salespeople, and roles that still needed people. Amazon's CEO put the same logic in a company memo. Fewer people doing some of today's jobs, more doing other kinds, even as it cut tens of thousands of corporate roles and said it would hire 11,000 engineers in a single year. And when these companies did rehire, they mostly weren't calling their old employees. Across a large workforce dataset, only about 5% of laid-off staff were later brought back by the same company. A small uptick, not a homecoming. The seats that reopened were mostly filled by different people, on different terms. The weakest recovery was at the bottom of the ladder. Hiring of new graduates at the largest tech firms fell by roughly a quarter in a single year, and by more than half compared with before the pandemic. That's not purely an AI story. Pandemic overhiring, higher interest rates, and plain caution all pushed the same way, but the drop is steep and real. Cut the entry level and you don't feel it now. You feel it in a few years when there's no one seasoned enough to become the senior specialist you can't do without. IBM's HR chief said exactly that, and the company reversed course, announcing it would triple its US entry-level hiring for the very jobs everyone insisted the machines would erase. What the headcount hid wasn't who or what, it was price. The value of labor didn't just shift, it split into pieces that moved in different directions, and 3 things were happening at once. First, at the routine end, the entry-level tasks, the predictable work a machine can now imitate, demand softened and bargaining power slipped. That work became easier to defer, to automate, or to hand to whoever could do it for less. Second, a narrow band of skills became dramatically more valuable. The people who can build these systems, steer them, and wire them into a working business. Across large job posting datasets, Roles that demand genuine AI skills advertise pay meaningfully higher than comparable roles without them, on the order of a quarter more. And third, the same job could quietly change underneath the title, a different seniority, a different location, a different employment arrangement, and carry a different cost. That divergence is sharpest inside a single company. Meta laid off about 8,000 people and reassigned roughly 7,000 more into new AI-focused teams. It also, in a deal reported by the New York Times, offered one 24-year-old AI researcher a package worth around $250 million over 4 years, among the largest individual pay deals in corporate history. Same company, one kind of work shown the door, another priced like a scarce natural resource. One more kind of value goes unpriced until it's gone: the knowledge inside experienced people. Ford leaned hard on automated camera-based quality inspection, a natural fit for routine pattern recognition. On its own, it was not delivering the quality results Ford needed, and veteran judgment became necessary again. So, over 3 years, the automaker brought back around 350 veteran engineers, not to scrap the system, but to retrain it and cover the exceptions it couldn't read. The knowledge Ford had let go turned out to be expensive to buy back. These companies weren't only deciding how many people to keep, but what to spend the money on instead. Together, the biggest players are steering toward roughly $700 billion in capital spending in a single year, most of it aimed at AI, chips, data centers, and the power to run them. Meta halted its stock buybacks and roughly doubled its AI spending. Alphabet's quarterly repurchases, once as reliable as a heartbeat, stopped in 2026. Payroll, stock compensation, buybacks, and infrastructure are now competing for the same finite pool of dollars. This isn't a claim that one laid-off worker directly paid for one server. Budgets don't run in straight lines. The harder shift is underneath. The question stopped being how many people a company needs and became what blend of people, software, chips, and capital produces the best return. Human labor is now just one line in that calculation, bidding against the others. Rapid reshuffling like this leaves damage that never shows up on a headcount chart. When a company cuts, the strong performers with options leave first, and the survivors quietly update their resumes. Knowledge walks out the door and doesn't transfer through a handover document. And the reversals aren't free. Buying people back usually costs more than keeping them would have. And yet the tidy "humans won" ending doesn't survive either, because the case against it is strong. A lot of that pandemic-era hiring was excess, and some of this cutting was overdue. It would have happened with or without a single line of AI. Meta shed roughly a quarter of its workforce at the low point and grew revenue by more than 70%, lifting revenue per employee from around $1.5 million to over $2.5 million. Most of that is a booming advertising business and a leaner, flatter organization rather than proof that software did the work. But it is plainly not a company that got burned by automation and retreated. Broader research keeps finding that the roles most exposed to AI are, for now, growing and more productive, not vanishing. And it's entirely possible that AI isn't driving today's job losses at all, but is quietly lowering how many people these companies will ever need to hire again. In which case, a flat headcount isn't a recovery. It's the last still frame before the number starts to fall for good. So neither ending holds. They hired people back, but back as what? Not a rewind. The old workforce didn't return. What appeared beneath that familiar total was a different mix, different roles, seniority, skills, and terms, a transformed labor market wearing the old one's number like a borrowed coat. Look one more time at that company. Meta let about 8,000 people go, moved roughly 7,000 into new AI teams, and reportedly offered a single AI researcher a $250 million package over 4 years. Set side by side, that can look like a company that couldn't decide whether people mattered. It's not indecision, it's a price list. One business putting a fresh and wildly different value on each kind of human work it depends on. The routine task, the scarce skill, the years of hard-won experience, the seat that could be moved or reshaped or automated. All of it revalued at once and handed back to us as if the only thing that had changed was a number that stayed the same. The layoffs were not the end of human labor. They were a repricing of it,